Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to our last session, which is going to be all about pillar number 4, and that is our live pillar for this empowered transition series. I'm really glad you're here watching and on the replay. If you have any questions, reach out to us, but we are just going to jump right in. I'll share my screen. There we go. Okay, so we're on pillar 4. Talked about 3 pillars already, and this time we're going to talk about living vibrantly throughout your entire menopause journey. This is the pillar that kind of brings everything else together. Now, we could cover a whole lot of different things, but we're going to keep it simple today. We're going to cover 2 key factors instead of all of the other pieces that make up the live pillar. So we're going to check back in, review the pillars. We're going to start with our key factor number 1, talking about stress and all of the things that go with stress and stress management. Then we'll move on to key factor number 2, which is all about sleep and maintenance. How do we bring this together and allow ourselves to get restful sleep? Because it really is a critical factor in our overall health. And we'll share some solutions with you, of course. It isn't all about all of the problems. It's all about how can we empower ourselves and take charge of our journey. And then we'll talk about moving forward, and we have some great resources to provide you with. So let's just take a very quick review of the 4 pillars of vibrant health. We started with how you think, which is the umbrella to all of the other pillars, really. I don't know, can you have pillars on top? It's the one that really supports and overarches all of the other pillars. And then we talked about how you eat and how that affects your body and your experience of the menopause journey, how important it is for movement, for longevity and good health. And today we're going to talk about how you live. And we're going to dive straight into the first key factor, and James is going to talk about managing your stress.
Thanks, Julie. So stress is kind of like my wheelhouse. I've suffered from stress myself in the past. I've done a lot of work to try and reduce my own stress. But also when it comes to managing menopause symptoms, I think that high stress levels outside of those that are just brought on by menopause itself are sort of like the biggest enemy of women during the menopause transition. The signs and symptoms of 3 things really closely marry each other. One are menopause symptoms, the other is symptoms of stress and adrenal burnout, and then the third one is irregular blood sugar balance, which we talked about back in the nutrition pillar. And so when all those 3 things are going on at once, one can exacerbate the other and can end up on this never-ending cycle of not being able to find some relief from somewhere. And I suppose the challenge is, as the slide says here, that the menopause is inherently stressful anyway. Your body's changing, there are psychological impacts. You've got all these hormonal imbalances, symptoms are all over the place. And then you've got increased risk of lots of other issues as well. Things like cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, depression. The risk factors for all those increase during menopause and the menopause transition. So our aim is always try and reduce stress as much as possible so we can transition smoothly from one side of life into another. So let's talk a little bit about stress hormones then. If you recall way back on the very first session that we did when we started introducing our 4 pillars, we talked about how the menopause transition is a hormonal journey that takes in far more than just your sex hormones, and stress hormones are one of the key ones that come into play here that can disrupt your overall hormonal balance. So we've got 2 main stress hormones. We've got cortisol and adrenaline. They're the ones that help us fight, flight, or freeze, the 3 Fs. They're both produced in your adrenal glands, and they work hard anyway, but they work even harder during menopause, and especially hard during menopause if you're one of those women who's trying to juggle a million things all at once. And so the stress hormones they're actually needed. You know, people talk about reducing stress altogether. We shouldn't actually reduce stress altogether. We need to reduce stress to acceptable levels, and we need to find a balance between being stressed and being de-stressed. So stress in its good form, what is called eustress, is the kind of stress that we do when we do mild to moderate exercise and we challenge our body somewhat and then our body adapts to it. Brilliant. When you've got this extreme stress, though, that comes in with fight, flight, or freeze, those two hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, were great when we were cavemen and women and we were running from, say, a saber-toothed tiger, because you wanted to get out of the way quickly. Yeah, you wanted to be able to either stand up, put your jukes up, and fight whatever it was that's attacking you, get out of the way as quickly as you can by fleeing or freezing so that thing didn't nurse you. And that's those same hormones are still important today. Say you're crossing the road and a car's coming towards you, you want to get out of the way pretty quickly. You're probably not going to sit and put your fists up to a car that's coming straight at you. But those hormones are a lot less helpful when they're employed to manage daily stresses. So when we've got these really, really chronically high stress levels all the time, because you're trying to be a businesswoman and a mom and a wife or partner and a friend and parenting up to your family, your parents all at the same time, they're the challenges that we get. So that's daily stress. And so then we've got high stress levels that aren't really serving us that well. So let's talk a little bit about cortisol, first of all. Cortisol is really, really probably the most important of the two stress hormones. It actually determines our circadian rhythm. So when we go to sleep and when we wake up, we want it to rise naturally in the morning when we see daylight first thing. It gives us our get up and go. And then we want to fall steadily throughout the day so we're ready for bed. And when cortisol becomes elevated outside of that early rise time, then that is when our well-being can be compromised long term. So if you could just move on, Julie, on to the next slide there for me. So the inherent links between cortisol and inflammation. Now, you might have heard about inflammation. Again, inflammation is needed. If you cut yourself or burn yourself, you want inflammation to take place. It's part of the healing process. You can have chronic low-level inflammation, though, whereby it starts to affect your body's systems overall. And inflammation is regulated by cortisol. When cortisol doesn't serve its proper function, that is dealing with acute stress, then inflammation can get out of control. And that chronic low-level inflammation can, again, be a risk factor for so many different things, like irregular blood sugar balance, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. So keeping inflammation under control is another role of cortisol and why we need cortisol to be at appropriate levels. There's also a concept which colloquially is known as adrenal fatigue. Basically, your adrenal glands, the ones that produce adrenaline and cortisol, they become so tired that they're not functioning well. The challenge with this is that if that happens, is that particularly when your ovaries stop producing estrogen, your body produces estrogen in two different places. One of them is in the adrenal glands, about 40% of it is produced there, and the other is in body fat. So if your adrenal glands are compromised, if they aren't working properly, if they're challenged, they're more likely to prioritize survival. So those two survival hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, over anything to do with sexual function. So hormones like estrogen. And at a time when varying levels of estrogen are challenging as it is, we want to try and get the adrenal glands to produce some estrogen so that that decline can be more managed rather than a really acute decline, which tends to be the thing that leads to most of the symptoms of menopause and menopause transition. And if you look at these things, I alluded to this earlier, if you look at the symptoms of adrenal fatigue, you've got insomnia, you've got low energy, you've got weight gain around the middle, you've got low mood, you've got low sex drive, you've got aches and pains. And surprise, surprise, the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, they almost exactly match those as well. And of course, if you throw in blood sugar balance, which has all these same symptoms again, then you're just adding on layer and layer of complexity, which is why it's crucial to get stress under control. So you can actually measure stress, believe it or not. There are functional tests that you can do. There's you can measure it in serum, in the blood, but you can also measure it by doing what is called a saliva test. And what you do is a lab will send you 4 tubes. You put some sputum in there at 4 different times of the day, and you send that off to the lab, and they will produce an indication of what your cortisol levels look through during the course of the day. And I think we've got a slide coming up that shows us what a cortisol results test looks like. There you go. So you 4 times to take your cortisol, to put your sputum into the test tubes at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. And ideally, the green chunky block there in the middle is kind of how you want this curve to fall. But you can see that something's happening around 12 p.m. midday, where this particular person who's been tested here, their cortisol levels on the black line there have dropped quite low, and then spiked again rather than coming down this nice gentle curve. So this would indicate somebody who is having irregular stress at different parts of the day. And so we'd like to try and eradicate that if we see this kind of picture in some functional testing. You can also measure your recovery from stress using something called HRV. It means heart rate variability. Now, lots and lots of different pieces of kit, pieces of electronics have a measure of heart rate variability in them today. I'm wearing what's called an Oura ring today. I'm not sure if you can see that on the small picture, but that's got some small electrodes in, pressed against my finger, and it takes my heart rate during the day. I'm also, because I run ultramarathons, I've also got my Garmin watch on. My Garmin watch also takes my heart rate constantly throughout the day. And what they do, or they can do, is they can produce something called a measure of heart rate variability. So what is heart rate variability? It's the difference between your heartbeats. Now, we tend to think, I'm not sure where this comes from, whether it's culturally from movies or something like that, that our heart rate should be absolutely stable. You want it to be rock on at a stable level all the time. And what you don't actually want that. What you want is the difference between heartbeats to be able to shift slightly, because when it can shift slightly, it means it's more ready to shift and kick into action when you need to fight stress. So HRV, basically, take all the science out of it. All we're looking at is the balance between the sympathetic nervous system, that is the fight or flight that we've talked about in the past, I think back in session 1, and the parasympathetic one, the rest and digest symptoms. And the truth is, when you're in a more relaxed state, the variation between beats is going to be higher, and that makes you more able to switch gears and make you more resilient. So we can actually practically measure stress, or our ability to recover from stress, in a number of different ways. So here's a picture of Prince William, who you'll all know as being the other half of a wonderful actress called Meghan Markle. He's wearing an Oura ring in that picture there, which is the same thing that I've got on my finger. There's a device called a Morpheus, which is a small wristband that you can wear, that you wear in the morning. It links to your phone. You can do a 3-minute stress test every single morning, and you can work things out. There are other elements as well, things like some of the Fitbits. There's another device called the Whoop, and your Apple Watch, if you're an Apple Watch wearer. They will all measure that heart rate variability and give you an indication of your ability to recover from stress quickly or slowly. And obviously, if we can't recover, that's okay. If we can't recover quickly, then we need to take measures that will help us do that. And that is exactly what this slide here is about. It's about emptying your stress bucket. So if you imagine, and I designed this some years ago, I really should do it differently, because anybody who knows anything about physics and gravity will know that that tap should actually be at the bottom. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to let much out of this bucket. But if you imagine that tap is actually at the bottom of this diagram, and you think that all the stress is those dark blue arrows coming in at the top, you've got relationship, you've got bad diet, you've got pollution, you've got work stress, poor sleep, bad finances, all that kind of stuff. When this bucket overflows, if you've got nothing allowing those stresses to come out, the results can be injury, depression, or getting sick. So what we want is ways to turn on that tap. Again, imagine it's at the bottom of the bucket, to let some of that stress out. And there's some things there which I'm sure you're all aware of. Good sleep gets help. Julie's going to talk about that shortly. Really helps with heart rate variability. Meditation, mindfulness, relaxation, exercise, actually having fun. Not taking everything so seriously all the time can be a great stress reliever. And of course, good nutrition, which we talked about back in session 2, because good nutrition will also help with blood sugar balance, which will also help with stress, which will also help with menopause symptoms. Once again, all these lines are becoming fabulously blurred as we talk about all these different lifestyle factors, which is why Julie and I teach on all these different lifestyle factors. So a couple of ways then to reduce stress, just following on from the previous slide. Balancing blood sugars is crucial. So those tips that we gave you back in the nutrition section, slowing down when you're eating lots of protein, eating lots of fiber, lots of fruit and vegetables, really, really key for that. Anti-inflammatory diet, again, follows the same idea. As you said, put bad habits there in inverted commas, undesirable habits, let's say, things like smoking, drinking too much, that kind of thing. Environmental stress, really, really crucial. You know, one of the key things that we see in people who don't sleep, and I'm sure Julie will talk about this in her section on sleep, is people who go to bed with their phone by the bed. Their phones are emitting blue lights. They might be looking at their phone just before they go to bed. It absolutely messes with their circadian rhythms. Then you've got all these ghost devices that are on in the night in your bedroom, you know, chargers and things like that, emitting small red diodes, blue diodes, green diodes, all those kind of things. That's environmental stress that's coming to the room almost without us noticing it. But then you've got the wider things as well, you know, height of summer, longer days, challenges with sort of like leaky blinds on windows that allow light in. That's an environmental stressor. It will disrupt your sleep. Noise can be an environmental stressor. Living by a polluted road could be an environmental stressor. Lots and lots of different ways. And we can't do stuff about all of those, you know, unless you're a millionaire and can just move like that from one place to another. You may have to live by that road, but what could you do to reduce some of that pollution? Can you put more plants outside, for instance, those kind of things? Exercise and movement, things like yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi. We talked about all those in the exercise session. Sleep hygiene that Julie's going to come on to. Things like meditation, breathing exercises, singing, forest bathing, reading, colouring, arts and crafts, all these things that people said, oh, it's a bit woo-woo and arty and all that kind of stuff. And a friend of ours said recently, don't poo-poo the woo-woo. You know, these things, absolutely. We will see some studies in a while that will show us how things like meditation and things like that can actually improve menopause symptoms. So this is not just us saying this, it's not just us making it up, it's not just us talking about stuff that's real, it's stuff that is based in actual science. So you can support it with some nutrition, some of those things we talked about. And again, things like supplements that we mentioned before in the session on nutrition. So green tea, omega-3 fats from salmon, sea vegetables, or from a supplement, magnesium, really, really key, B vitamins, and then Julie's wheelhouse, which is the herbs, things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, and zinc as well. All things that we can put in to our diets to help reduce stress. If you want a reminder on those, please refer back to that session 2 that we did on nutrition. We don't want to repeat ourselves too much, but there's lots of information there on what foods can help when it comes to reducing blood sugar balance and therefore reducing stresses. So here you go. We've got some studies for you then. This is a general study, not just on menopause, but overall. It's called The Effectiveness of Progressive Muscle Relaxation, Deep Breathing and Guided Imagery in Promoting Psychological and Physiological States of Relaxation. So research suggests that multiple forms of relaxation training, things like progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, breathing exercises, visualization, they can all help individuals reduce stress, enhance the relaxation state, and therefore improve overall well-being. I think we've got a couple of these to go through. This is one about using yoga and meditation over an 8-week period to see what effect it had on depressive symptoms. As we said many times during these presentations, menopause transition absolutely primes women for potential depression, and yoga meditation over the course of 8 weeks has been shown to be an effective intervention in reducing the risk factors of a woman becoming depressed. So you think about things like deep breathing, meditation, yoga, those kind of things as potential aids to your journey. A couple of other thoughts. Diaphragmatic breathing. I won't go through this for too much, but generally if we tell people to take a deep breath, people tend to breathe from the upper body, the upper chamber. So you take a deep breath, people lift their lungs up like this. And what they're actually doing there is they're actually compressing the space that's in their lungs. So diaphragmatic breathing is actually, it feels counterintuitive because we've kind of forgotten how to breathe like this. Is breathe in through the nose, slow, deep breath in, and allow your belly to push outwards. Your belly pushing outwards drops a muscle called your diaphragm down, and that allows your lungs to expand further to fill in more air. And then when you exhale, so when you're blowing out, that's when you're lifting up and lifting your belly in to expel the air as much as possible. So it's belly in as you breathe in, belly out as you breathe in, belly in as you breathe out. So it's that kind of counterintuitive in-out thing there that we should be looking for. Another concept which can help reduce stress is something called box breathing. Box breathing is really, really simple. Count to 4. If you can count to 4, you can box breathe. So when you breathe in, you're going to count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 as you breathe in. Then you're going to hold for a count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually a bit of a challenge. You do have to think about it. But it's very, very good for alleviating stress. So it might be something you want to think about trying, see if it fits for you, see if it works for you. And then some of you may be aware of a chap called Wim Hof. He's Dutch, sort of like alternative scientist, takes lots of cold baths, that kind of thing, but he also has a breathing technique, which is also designed. So this is designed to actually produce a micro stress to the body so that by getting used to those micro stresses, our body deals with stress better. So this is less a stress relieving technique than a training technique to make your body better at dealing with stress. So you breathe fully in and let go 30 times. Then you breathe fully out and hold it for as long as possible. And then breathe fully in and hold for 15 seconds and repeat that 4 times. Now that sounds a little bit convoluted, but there are lots of apps that you can get where Wim will actually talk you through this with his soothing Dutch tones and help you get the hang of it a little bit better. I think it's a really, really good technique for learning how to deal better with stress, but it is a bit of a challenge until you get used to it. But yeah, give it a go and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. So a question for you then before I start thinking about handing over to Julie in the sleep component. You know, we've got a body battery, I suppose, and you know, what's yours looking like at the moment? What are the debits like? What are the things that are taking away from your energy levels and from you, from your verve and your vitality? Is it work stress? Is it issues with your family and friends? Is it negative emotions, low blood sugar, poor sleep and TV and computer? And what are you actually putting into the bank? What credits are you putting in? Are you putting in yoga, breathing, meditation, all those things we've just talked about, creativity, talking therapy? Because they're really, really important to help you achieve that concept of balance, which everybody talks about, and we talk about it so much, it's almost become like, oh God, somebody's going to talk about balance again. It's really, really super important to allow ourselves to have a life whereby stress can be a part of it, but how do we actually deal with that stress? Because nobody's making stress go away. We live in a modern world, it just doesn't happen. So what are we doing to deal with it? And that's what I would personally encourage you to think about from this section of our 4 presentations.
And I would add to that you know, we worry about our watches running out of battery. We worry about our phones running out of battery. We're always finding a place to charge them up. But what are we doing to charge up our battery? That's I love this slide. Yeah. So now that we've talked about stress, let's talk about sleep, because this is something else that's really key in our ability to stay healthy and navigate this whole phase of our lives and really our overall health, generally speaking. Sleep is when your brain and your body do all of the maintenance and repair functions that it's supposed to do to keep you vibrant and healthy. So we detoxify and remove waste. Our brain recharges. It organizes and stores memories during this time. People say, oh, I don't need much sleep. I do fine with 4 or 5 hours, but the research doesn't support that. The truth is most of us need at least 7 hours of sleep to have good cognitive function, to be able to maintain stable moods, to be able to make good choices in areas like doing our movement and making good food choices. It's essential because it's when we burn the most fat, it regulates our metabolism, it restores our immune system function, and detoxification, because we talked before about spent hormones needing to be cycled out of the body, and all of the waste products from things that our body doesn't want to absorb being cycled out of the body. So sleep is a really important factor in that cycle. And in the UK and North America has similar numbers. 36% of adults report that they struggle to get to sleep on a weekly basis. Think about that. We have all of this stuff coming in, but there's not a lot of time. We just keep cramming more and more into our days, and it's no wonder that we can't unwind and we struggle to get to sleep. And almost 1 in 5, as they say, have trouble falling asleep, and nearly half have trouble falling asleep at least once a month. That's a really big portion of our population, and it doesn't speak very much to the healthfulness of the lifestyle that we're living. And of course, women in this stage of life have even more difficulty because of those fluctuating hormones and the stresses that we have from all of the things that we're trying to do for everyone else, and all of the other factors that go along with menopause. And that age range, 45 to 54, are the people who struggle the most. So it's not uncommon, but it is something that we do have more control over than we may think. And again, we talk about all of these health factors. Sleep, when we have poor sleep hygiene and we have disturbed sleep, it's very closely linked to things like heart disease, obesity, psychiatric conditions, depression, anxiety, impaired cognition. We all know we get kind of brain fog with menopause, and certainly, if you have any autoimmune issues, that's also common with that. And when they pair together, that's even worse. So sleep becomes more and more important all the time to keep our health going. Again, immune function, digestive disorders, it's just starting to sound like a repeat, but all of these things really do play a key role in our health. And again, there's research behind this in this whole menopause journey. A lot of the symptoms are neurological. So when our estrogen is fluctuating and our progesterone is fluctuating, the thermoregulation, our hot flushes and our cold flushes, sleep and circadian rhythms get disrupted. And depression, a lot of women go to the doctor with these issues. We can control more of these lifestyle factors than we may think, so we don't need to go straight to pharmaceutical interventions. But it does play a big role in depression and impairment in our cognitive function. So we want to be very attentive to that. And again, here's some more research, women's health study, and another research paper about poor sleep in menopause. And it is one of the most common factors that's reported. And James and I can attest to that being true with most of our clients as well. High frequency of depression was related to a high frequency of poor sleep. So this is a critical factor. And again, the prevalence of hot flashes among women with insomnia is especially high in late postmenopausal women. And that's interesting because a lot of women that I speak with in the perimenopause portion of this journey are really struggling with sleep. So I would be really keen to see if there are some current studies that show the difference between perimenopause and postmenopause in that area. But the bottom line is that this is an issue for all of us through this journey in our lives. But there is good news. It's not all doom and gloom. When we work on treating insomnia, when we work on the lifestyle factors that we can control, and we'll talk about those in a moment, we can interrupt some of these loops that we get into. And I understand, because I've had sleep issues myself. We get to where we're not sleeping, and then we get stressed because we're not sleeping, and then the stress causes us to sleep less, and that cycle just continues. So when we can stop that loop, that feedback loop, we can improve a lot of our symptoms and get more restful sleep that our body needs. most of us are familiar with the symptoms of not sleeping well, but here are some of the biggies. And especially when it comes to things like adrenal fatigue and when our cortisol gets out of sync with our circadian rhythms. You may sleep for enough hours, but you still feel tired or sluggish the next day. If you snore quite a bit, this could be it could be a factor. Sleep apnea, I know it is becoming more and more common. I know a lot of people who use CPAP machines now because their sleep apnea is getting worse. And there are, again, other lifestyle factors involved in that. If you typically breathe through your mouth at night, that can it can dry out your airways. It can dry out your the mucus lining in your nasal passages. And I know something that's becoming really common because a friend of mine is a breathing coach, and she has people tape their mouth shut at night unless they have some kind of blockage in their sinuses. And I did that for a while, and I was surprised at what a difference that made in the quality of my sleep. As a matter of fact, now I'm reminding myself I might try that again. If you have ongoing symptoms that feel like you just can't resolve them, those chronic things like we talked about, fatigue, brain fog, or digestive disruption, gastrointestinal issues, it could be, again, related back to your sleep, because the sleep and the gut are very closely related. Our gut is our second brain. It's where a lot of our immune system resides. It's where serotonin and melatonin are produced, and we need to really pay attention to that connection as well. But that's a topic for a whole other workshop. So some of the causes of poor sleep, again, sleep environment is key. Is your room cool? Because it's conducive to better sleep if your room is kept at a cooler temperature. Do you have a comfortable bed? Is your mattress in need of replacement? What about your pillow? What about blackout drapes? If you can't get blackout drapes, can you wear a soft eye mask to help you block out some of that light? Do you have your electronics right next to your bed, or are they in another room, which is optimal? That's that exposure to blue light and electromagnetic frequencies that can disrupt our brain waves. So is your sleep schedule irregular? Do you go to bed at the same time every night, or does it vary? Because that can be a factor. Our bodies love routine and rhythm. That's why we call it the circadian rhythm, right? Our bodies, it's that cycle of nature. Stress, anxiety, and depression, of course, all contribute. And the gut microbiome imbalances, that's something that we would love to delve into a bit deeper in another workshop, because there really is a significant correlation or relationship between our gut microbiome health and our health generally speaking, but especially in menopause. Improper breathing, again, some medications can interfere. Do you drink caffeine late in the day? That can interfere. I know I can't drink coffee anymore after noon. I used to be able to drink it until I went to bed, and now body has changed, just doesn't tolerate it anymore in this cycle of life. And alcohol may help you drop off to sleep, but it can actually prevent you from going into those deeper sleep stages that your body needs to refresh and repair. And of course, hormonal imbalances, because we are talking about menopause. So let's talk a little bit about sleep hygiene. What can you do? Even if you're not sleeping, practicing relaxation and doing your best to be in bed for 7 to 8 hours can train your body to get into that cycle, into that rhythm, into that habit of knowing that it's time to go to sleep. If you get less than 7 hours or more than 9, it can be detrimental. Sometimes more than 9, you wake up feeling sluggish or achy from laying in bed. Less than 7, you just don't have that chance to re-energize. So shooting for 8 hours is ideal, but the closer you can get to that, the better. Being consistent with your bedtime. Again, it's about that rhythm, because your body loves routine. So if you go to bed and get up at the same time most days of the week, you will find that makes a difference in your ability to get restful sleep and for your ability to wind down when it's time to wind down. And of course, the quality of your sleep. There are 5 different sleep stages that you go through, And any disruption to those cycles, you cycle through them a couple of times during the night, and each one of those 5 lasts for different periods of time. And you need to cycle through all of them in order to have your body do all of the things that it does in sleep, because it does different things during those different sleep stages. So solutions to this: optimize your internal environment first, right? We want to focus on our diet, our food intake, making sure that we're eating a low inflammatory diet. So that Mediterranean style diet we talked about in the nutrition piece, that's been shown to really help alleviate some of the menopause symptoms. Common sleep disruptors, we want to avoid those. The things like the spicy food right before bed, or drinking caffeine or alcohol. Getting regular exercise can also help, especially if you do it earlier in the day, because it allows your body to exert some of that pent up stress and release those feel good hormones and get you moving through the rest of the day, so that you can kind of relax and unwind when it's time to do that. Improving your gut health. Probiotics are showing a lot of promise in this area. And if you aren't taking in fermented foods, like kefir, sauerkraut, yogurt, then taking a probiotic could help repopulate your gut flora with the good bacteria that it needs, because we need good bacteria in our gut. Optimizing your external environment, again, just as important. Reducing those sources of blue light and bright light while you're sleeping. Keep your bedroom temperature low, as I said. Strive for quiet. Some people find earplugs help. If you're living with someone who snores loudly and that's a disruptor, then maybe earplugs would be a good option for you. And there's a company called Become Clothing, and they actually have created a line of menopause friendly clothes, and there's activewear and clothing and sleepwear that actually help to wick moisture away during your hot flushes and retain some of the heat you need when you're having the cold flushes, and really help regulate. So ideally you won't have to be getting up and changing your pajamas in the middle of the night, but it also helps during the day. When you're in a corporate environment and suddenly you have one of those little experiences of sweat and red face. So you can look into those. There are more of these companies coming into existence now because there's more attention being given, but that one looks pretty good. So other solutions: optimizing your sleep schedule. So we talked about this before. James talked about the 3-2-1 routine, right? No food 3 hours before bed. Finish eating 3 hours before you go to bed. Stop working at least 2 hours before bedtime, and shut down all of your electronics 1 hour before bedtime. That alone would make a huge difference for pretty much everybody. And I know it's not an easy thing to do. So again, if this is something you think, oh, I could never do it, start small. Try just gradually working your way into that. If you currently go to bed with your phone, try leaving it 15 minutes before you go to bed and work your way up to an hour. Avoiding strenuous exercise close to bedtime. That can be very stimulating. And eating as well, because while you're resting, you don't want your body to have to be digesting food as well. It's extremely taxing for your body to digest food, and it will focus primarily on that and not do all of the other repair and maintenance it needs to be doing while you're sleeping. So try not eating before bedtime. And again, have a nice wind down routine. What would it look like if you could relax and wind down well in the evening? For me, as an example, I sit down and I cuddle with the dog and sit and talk with my husband. I'll have a cup of herbal tea. I might read a little bit. We turn the lights down lower. That just signals the body that it's time to go to bed. So creating a wind down routine that looks right for you, that works for you, that feels good, is a really good way to signal your body and your brain that it's time to start thinking about sleep. If you need kind of next level solutions, there are other things that you can do. So optimizing your hormones, there are a lot of different ways to do that, whether it's bioidentical hormone replacement therapy or some other way to do that through nutrition and exercise. We want to optimize those hormones and improve the detoxification that our body needs to do. Taking melatonin, some people do well with it, some people don't. I know in some countries now it's not available because people tend to think, oh, I'm going to take this thing, it must be good, so I'll just take more of it. But this is one of those things that you don't want to overdo, but you could try it and see how it works for you. Some people it gives really vivid dreams, and other people it works really well for. Mom Montmorency cherry, I'm not familiar with that particular one, but I have heard of it. James, do you have any info on that?
Yes, it's a bitter cherry juice that you can buy. Here in the UK, a litre of it costs about £30. So you only need like a capful diluted in water before bed. It actually contains tryptophan, which is also in the slide in the bullet point underneath about turkey. So tryptophan is a precursor of melatonin and serotonin. So, it can help your body naturally produce more melatonin and serotonin, those sleep and feel good hormones. And so it's a really good one. I try it periodically. If I'm having periods of bad sleep, I'll get a bottle in. It lasts forever as well. It's really inexpensive. It's also more palatable before you just go to bed than tucking into a couple of slices of deli meat as well. So yeah. It's my favorite.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I love turkey for that. I mean, in the US after Thanksgiving, who doesn't want to have a power nap after eating a big turkey dinner, right? And tracking your sleep, a lot of people find this to be very helpful, whether you use a diary, a paper diary, an electronic diary on your phone, or a wearable like James was talking about earlier, like the Oura Ring. I use a Fitbit. I know other people use Garmin's or Apple Watches, because you can watch, you get a sleep score, you can based on a number of factors, your heart rate variability in some cases, as well as the different sleep cycles and the length of time you spend in each of them. And some will even track your body temperature throughout the night. So you can see how those things are fluctuating, and ideally link it back to what you've done during the day or even during the past couple of days. What did you eat? How active were you? What were your stress levels? How did those things affect your sleep? And I find that to be very fascinating. And again, improving your breathing, maybe try mouth taping or try one of those breathing techniques. So the bottom line about your sleep hygiene, this is a quote from Dr. Mike Ruscio. Sleep hygiene is one of the most important things you can do to pay attention to within your wellness plan. So during this phase of life, we really want to be attentive to how we're sleeping and how we're taking care of our bodies so that we can get that restorative energy that we want, and our bodies can be doing the right things at the right time. So let's talk about maintenance and next steps. One more look at those pillars again. How you think about sleep and stress can affect how you experience it, as well as how you think about all of these other factors and all the other aspects of your life. And again, we could have easily gone into probably a 3-hour session on this live pillar because it encompasses so many different things, but sleep and stress are probably the two key ones for you to focus on, and the simplest places to start, really. So for the future, where are you going to start, and what path do you want to follow to make your journey easier? Don't try to do everything at once. Please, if you want to do anything for yourself, just pick one thing and see how that works. Pick it, try it, practice it for a while. If that doesn't work, maybe practice it in a different way. Celebrate every win. You're not going to nail everything and be perfect the first time you try. That's okay. It's expected. It's part of what we call positive, messy action, right? Just take a step and see what happens. And if that doesn't go well, then take another step and see what happens. Be curious instead of judging yourself as a success or failure. We have to fail before we succeed. We have to fall down before we get up, just like the baby learning to walk. We don't give up on them because they haven't stood up and walked on day one. So we have to give ourselves that same grace and remember to celebrate all of those wins. We have a few resources for you in appreciation of being with us for these 4 hours together, these 4 sessions. If you're struggling in any of these areas, you'd like some help or guidance, you're welcome to book a free call with either one of us. And you can do that at freecall.fabulousbeyond40.com. We're here to support you in any way we can, and we can find the right resources for you and help you get started down the right path. We do also offer an amazing low cost and high value membership, and that's called Club Fabulous Beyond 40. If you go to club.fabulousbeyond40.com, you'll find out all of the things that you can get out of that and all the things that will benefit you from being a part of that membership. And I'd love to see you in there. And you can also stay active in our Facebook group. We're doing challenges, sharing recipes, exchanging ideas, and it's a great place to get community support because that's something else that we really do need at this phase of life, especially. So if you look up Fabulous Beyond 40, the Facebook group or the FB group, you'll find us there. And if you're really stuck, James, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, well, obviously, like all coaches, we can work one-on-one with clients for people who don't necessarily want to work in that environment whereby they're sharing things with people that they don't necessarily know. You know, community works for some people, it doesn't work for others. And if you've got a specific challenge or issue that feels quite debilitating, then one-to-one coaching is probably better suited towards you. It's also better suited towards you because we can offer some more direct interventions as well. So we can do, we put their female hormonal testing. We use a high-level blood testing company here in the US, in the UK, called Functional DX. They actually assess around 90 to 95 different biomarkers across that can give us insight into all the things that we've talked about, from your nutritional status to your stress hormones, to your sex hormones, to whether your kidneys are working properly, whether you're eliminating your food properly or not. So really, really intense tests that give us a health action plan that we can then really target interventions towards you. And Julie mentioned the links there between the microbiome, our gut bacteria, and hormonal symptoms. And we can also do advanced stool tests as well, where we can really delve into much deeper than your regular doctor or your GP can do exactly what the makeup of your microbiome is. We can see all those wonderful populations of the different bugs in there, and we can see which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, which we want to have more of, which we want to have less of, and we can offer interventions that are best suited towards whichever path that blood test is showing us. So that offers us the chance to get really into the nitty-gritty of people who've got very specific health conditions or complaints, or people who've actually got multifactorial conditions. So, you know, if you already know that you have an adrenal issue and now you're menopausal, but you're also celiac, this kind of testing is the kind of thing that can really delve deeply and potentially come up with some solutions there. And I've seen fantastic results from both the blood testing and from the microbiome testing.
Great. So bottom line, we're here for you. We're here to help in any way we can. Feel free to reach out to us individually. You can visit our website at fabulousbeyond40.com. You can book a free call. You can do all of those things we mentioned just a moment ago, and we would love to hear back from you. So thank you for taking part and watching this series. We're happy to be able to work with you, and we hope that you've taken away something useful, and let us know how we can help you further.